Citigroup, one of the largest banks, and they're set to pay one of the largest fines in connection with the subprime mortgage mess. And it helped lead, as we all know, to that crisis of 2008. Well, Citigroup has admitted to misleading investors by selling fraudulent mortgage securities that they knew were made up of bad subprime loans.
We hold the bank accountable for this wrongdoing, which had devastating ripple effects that cascaded through economies and financial institutions across the globe.
Now, the bank has reached a $7 billion settlement with the Justice Department. $2.5 billion will go towards consumer relief, and some of the balance, it will go to people with underwater mortgages. Some homeowners will also be paid directly for the losses that they sustained during the fiscal disaster. You may remember JP Morgan settled for $13 billion last year, and Bank of America, they're also facing a pending lawsuit, and there are talks that settlement discussions are already underway. Well, tonight, our legal dream team is back. We're joined by Mayo Bartlett, attorney and former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office, Jim Kasouras, criminal defense attorney in Manhattan, lecturing at New York Law School, visiting professor at the University of Birmingham in England, and Doug Von Oist, founding partner of Karsten Von Oist, focusing on corporate misconduct, and selected as by the Legal 500 as one of the most influential trial lawyers in our nation. And he's back from lovely Detroit. Welcome back here. I'll let you start off here. When you see the numbers, $13 billion before, $7 billion the announcement today, do you believe justice is served?
No. I think that they're creating a template to monetize fraud. So basically, now they're getting in trouble for monetizing mortgages and selling them and predatory lending. Now there's a template being created for how much a bank has to pay back from doing this. No, I don't think justice has been served.
What do you think justice would look like?
Well, justice to me is if fraud is taking place and people are committing crimes, that a prosecutor steps in and charges people, human beings, with crimes, and they get prosecuted for it. That's justice to me.
Big problem for you, Jim, that there is not enough deterrence here, that nobody saw anybody walked out in a perp walk with cuffs. Should that be part of this, or should we treat financial crimes, and more specifically crimes that have bearings on the entire economy here differently than we would a typical fraud case that somebody might see at the White Plains Courthouse, for example?
There's no deterrence for these banks. There's no deterrence for the too big to fail, too big to jail banks. There's plenty of deterrence for the far smaller people who are getting prosecuted, like my clients, because they are the ones that you can go after because they're not too big to jail and not too big to fail. You know, somebody needs to just step up and say, we're not prosecuting these people because we can't. Instead of all the lip service that we get, we're going to extract as much money as we can, and that's that. But there's no deterrence as far as they go, and it will happen again.
We were mentioning right before we came on that the U.S. Attorney, Mr. Bahara, had a less than sterling press conference today when he was talking about why the number and why not some of the things that both Doug and Jim mentioned probably the public would have liked to have seen here.
Absolutely.
Why can't they, and not just this administration, previous administrations as well, why can't they secure convictions here? And why can't the penalties, I mean, $7 billion is a lot of money, $13 billion is a lot of money, but why can't it be bigger or more painful than it is? I think the general public expected, if you said in 2008, are people going to jail? They'd say, of course they're going to jail. Nobody's gone to jail from the big banks here.
Well, I deal with prosecutors every single day, federal, state, and I hear them frequently tell me what they can't do. And I really don't want to hear what you can't do, because basically they can do anything that they choose to do. And they'll come after people for the smallest cases. We'll spend $100,000 for someone to go to jail because they stole this mug. And the people will pay that money. There'll never be a question about where it's coming from. When you look at these cases, intentional fraudulent acts here, where you have people, valuations of homes that don't make sense. So not only are you hurting the person who's underwater, you're hurting all their neighbors, because these houses are used as comps. So if you think of dominoes going across the entire nation, one house that now was worth $250, you think is worth $350, everybody's out of whack. You're hurting the entire country. So you can certainly go after, as Doug said, you go after individuals, prosecute those individuals. What you think should happen sentence-wise really doesn't make that much of a difference to me, but there should be a criminal consequence for that. And it's more a question that they're not willing to do so.
Okay, but here's the rub that I don't get. Everything you guys said makes sense to me, but Preet Bharara is a guy who likes headlines. He loves to be at 5 o'clock on all the local news here talking about the conviction he secured. So nobody's going to tell me that he wouldn't love to see one of these guys in a nice three-piece suit here doing the perp walk for the local news.
I don't know.
So why didn't he? No,
Well, he said
I don't know that
I
he
mean,
wants
look
to
at
see that
Spitzer.
person.
Spitzer's star rose as the sheriff of Wall Street, okay? So obviously there's political value to this here. There's commerce that you get as a prosecutor if you bring these guys down. They're not
said
popular with the public.
He said it in a news conference. He talked about the ramifications of bringing one of these banks down and the effects that it would have on the citizenry,
But let's be clear,
and
Jim,
so on and so forth.
Can we have our cake and eat it too, which is we don't want to bring down the largest commercial banks here, and now that there's been a separation with commercial and investment to a large degree, but that doesn't mean individuals can't feed a mayo.
Absolutely.
So
You can-
why can't he have it both ways?
He can, but they choose not to, and I believe for political reasons. There was no question, for example, in J.P. Morgan, they identified the fraud that was committed, and they said, we know the individuals that committed it. You can prosecute these individuals. That would be a deterrent that would affect the company as a whole, and then you can install other people in their place who can run the company legally.
The same players are involved in money laundering of drugs from major drug cartels. We engage in a war on drugs, but yet we go to the bank every day with people who are co-conspirators in those matters. So at the end of the day, you can go clearly after the people who you can earmark and say, yes, you were involved in this. There's got to be some deterrent, because what you're doing essentially is you are monetizing. You're saying if you have enough money, it doesn't
Buy
make a
your way
difference.
out.
Buy your way out, or you don't even have to buy your way out. You're not going to be charged.
Quickly, ascribe a motive why, you heard these guys, why haven't we seen guys that you would argue they got them pretty, at least bring them to trial? I mean, we don't even see, these guys don't even see the inside of a courtroom.
I wish I knew. I mean, I think that there's an argument made that you want quick fixes to keep everything moving along. And if you're going to damage the economy in any way, you avoid doing that. But I think what you're ultimately doing is you're setting up a huge failure down the road. Because ultimately, the people that are involved in this are saying, hey, listen, nothing happened. Nothing
We're
happened
good.
to me. Let's do it again.
And for me, I get the Fed's argument here about, constructive destruction, if you will. If you go after this in 2008, 2009, okay, but we're 6 years out. I mean,
Statute of limitations
you
is
poll
your-
anybody, right? Anybody would have thought if 5-6 years from now, they'll at least have a few symbols to this. The only guys that got nailed were for insider trading, which has nothing to do with what happened in 2008. Okay, coming up next here, I'm really curious where these guys are going to come down on this. Cops on camera. Is it a crime, or should it be a crime, to record police officers who are either, they argue, doing their job, or some say they're breaking the law here? We're going to take a look at a lawsuit that argues recording the police is a First Amendment right.